Zach Gallen, the ace of the Arizona Diamondbacks, was named a Cy Young finalist. But with his second half struggles, was he deserving of the honor?
You are Locked On Diamondbacks, your daily Arizona Diamondbacks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, baseball fans. Welcome to Locked On MLB, Locked On Diamondbacks crossover, the first we've done since the end of the World Series. Normally, this is a weekly event where Millard and I cross over, but, since the end of the World Series, we've kind of done our thing. I am your host of Locked On MLB, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully. I am an Emmy-nominated television producer who's been a baseball podcaster for well over a decade now, and I have now completed my fifth full season here as a host on the Locked On Podcast Network. Follow us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter or on Instagram. I am your pal Sully. I'm at Sully Baseball on Twitter, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. Today's episode is brought to you by Jace Medical. Empower yourself when you purchase a Jace case, providing you with a personal supply of 5 antibiotics that treat over 50 infections. Get yours at jacemedical.com. That's JASE medical.com. But this is a crossover. It's not a solo episode. So who is also with us today?
I am Millard Thomas, host of the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast, reuniting with my old friend Sully Baseball here for another crossover. Please follow Locked On Diamondbacks on YouTube. Hit subscribe there. We're on all your streaming platforms, of course. And please follow me on Twitter at CareerThomas24 for the personal account, or look up Locked On Diamondbacks both Twitter and Instagram.
Let's talk a quick bit about the trivia question. When we had Ryan Finkelstein of Locked On Mets, I said the Mets have won 2 World Series. The pitcher who clinched the 69 World Series and the pitcher who clinched the 86 World Series are connected directly. What is that connection? And I got a couple of people get it right. My buddy Marcel in Switzerland, who's been following me since the old Sully Baseball day, I'll give Marcel a quick shout out. The connection is Jerry Koosman clinched the 69 World Series with a complete game, and then towards the end of his career was traded to the Twins for a minor leaguer named Jesse Orosco, who went on to clinch the 1986 World Series for the Mets. So the two pitchers who clinched the World Series for the Mets, well, they were traded for each other. So that's a little bit of connection. Yeah, a little fun fact there. But no pitcher has ever clinched a World Series for the Diamondbacks because their lone championship was famously a walk-off hit, of which I have said that while everyone remembers Luis Gonzalez, the real dramatic moment was Tony Womack's game-tying double off of Rivera, because suddenly that meant Rivera was fallible. But this is not 2001. This is 2023. And Millard, you and I have not talked since the ending of the World Series. I know the ending was bitter for you, so that's why I gave you a little bit of space, and I assume you didn't listen to the celebration of Bruce Bochy because I didn't want you to vomit on the microphone there. Tell me your initial thoughts and where you are right now with it.
Yeah, my initial thoughts and where I'm at is still kind of the same, where it's like, the ending is, of course, sad. I'm still reeling from the loss. It still hurts as much as it did in the moment. I was able to go to the Game 5, a World Series game, and see the Dbacks, unfortunately, their last game of the season. And as soon as the Rangers won that game, I was like, let's get out of this stadium, because I could not watch the Rangers celebrate on Chase Field. And thankfully, they did not go diving into the pool. But for the whole season, it's like, yeah, the ending was sad, but I'm still grateful for the journey. I'm still grateful for a D-backs team that exceeded expectations in their regular season. One of the best teams in baseball the first half. Ups and downs in the second half, but heated up at the right time to make it to the postseason. Heated up in the playoffs and rode that run all the way to the World Series. Yes, they didn't live up to the standard that they might have set through those first 3 rounds, but they still battled the Texas Rangers. They still had opportunities to win that World World Series. Unfortunately, they didn't, but I'm still so proud of what this D-backs team was able to accomplish. Everyone says they were ahead of schedule this season, and that is true. You never want to waste an opportunity when you have one like the D-backs had this past year, but they didn't build this team to make it to the World Series and win a World Series this year. This roster was not ready. You saw it. They had weaknesses on the big stage, like not being able to come through repeatedly to get that big hit, or maybe lack of rotation depth. So knowing that this D-backs team has the ceiling to make it to another World Series potentially in the future, Mike Hazen now knows what he has to do in this offseason to improve this D-backs team and potentially get back in 2024.
Yeah, I think you're right in so many levels. I mean, let's just again, I know sometimes the whole hey, let's look at the bright side. When I know how rotten the ending must feel. I mean, I've been there. I mean, as a Boston fan, 86 was, seismic. But also there are years like 99 or 88 or 2008 where, they didn't even get to the World Series, but you look back and like, if only this or that had happened. And I think really it starts to heal. It takes about a month or so to heal. I mean, here's the one thing I will say in terms of the glass half full for Arizona this year. Remember where they were when they lost game 2 against Philadelphia 2-0. They didn't even look like they belonged on the field with them. It looked like, oh boy, this was, if there was any team that was just happy to be there and just avoid, even when they went back to Arizona, they were, you and I talked a big game of like, hey, they still can do this, they can still do that. But there was a little bit in my head was just don't get swept. Good Lord, just salvage a game from this, because the point I made when they lost 10-0, if you forfeit a game, it's 9-0. You have to be able to beat not showing up. If they didn't show up, they would have lost 9-0. They show up, they lost 10-0. They would have been better off just staying at home watching Netflix. So if you had told me after the 10-0 loss that this team was going to get to game 5 of the World Series, that would have been astonishing. And of course, people will say it was a 5-game series. It was dominated by Texas. But the truth of the matter was they had a lead in game 1 in the 9th inning.
Yeah.
And it was 1-0 going to the 9th inning in game 2. It would not have taken much for this series to go 6. If one of those games broke the other way, that's a much different series we're talking about.
Yeah, and there's no shame in losing to that Texas Rangers team. Like, even though it hurts, we lost to a great Major League Baseball team. That Texas Rangers team went on a historic run this postseason, never losing a road game. Like, that's something that's going to go down in the history books. Like, that's going to be the first thing that's brought up from this Texas Rangers run. When you look back at their postseason, their domination on the road, and they were able to come into Arizona and shut down that D-backs offense. So it's like, you just got to tip your cap. That's a Rangers team that spent big money a couple off seasons ago. Like, that was a team that was all pot committed to win this season. They made major moves at the deadline. So it's like, you're going to tip your cap to the Texas Rangers for beating the Arizona Diamondbacks. And those points you just made, it's like, that's why I'm not too upset when I look back at this season. The memories I'm going to have is going to be fun, because I'm going to look back and think about how they outplayed the Brewers in the wild card round, how they took down the LA Dodgers first 2 games in LA, and then they had that massive game 3 with the 4 home runs, and then going into Philadelphia, game 6, game 7, the resilience this team showed every single round of the postseason, even in the World Series. They didn't get the job done in the end, but I'm always going to look back at the 2023 season and have only positive memories.
Okay, but I got to go negative a little bit here.
Oh, okay.
Which game hurt more? Game 1, the Seager tying the game and Garcia hitting the walk-off, or game 5 where Gallen's masterpiece gets pulled from under him? Which one?
I think
Which
To
one
me,
hurt
game
more?
5 hurts more because it's not just the fact that Gallen throws a no-no through 6. Like, you've been waiting for that Zach Gallen moment the whole postseason.
Mhm.
There was so many times you had, like, that game 5 against Philadelphia where the series was tied and you could have went back to Philly up 3-2. Gallen stunk in that game. He stunk in game 1 against the Texas Rangers. There was a little run where Gallen was struggling in this postseason, and people were questioning if Gallen was that true ace frontline starter that the Arizona Diamondbacks needed in the postseason. And with the Dbacks in a do or die elimination game back against the wall, Gallen stepped up in a huge way, had that no through 6. But it was the offense leaving runners on the bases multiple times throughout that game. I think was the most infuriating part because they left like 11 men on bases. I think they were like 0 for 10 with like runners in scoring position or something that game. Like, they had so many opportunities in that game 5. So many times they had second and third, 1 out, no outs, and they just could do nothing with dudes like Corbin, Carroll, and Ketel Marte at the plate to bring those guys home. And repeatedly, the offense was not able to get it done. Yes, Paul Sewald giving up the game-tying home run in the 9th inning of game 1 hurt. But at least that was the first game you feel like you can at least bounce back from that. By the time you get to game 5, do or die, the season's over if you don't win this. The offense repeatedly not coming through in the clutch, I think that hurt more than game 1.
Yeah, I mean, those games where you're 3 outs away from winning are always a gut punch. But
Yeah.
also, you know, the Gallen was so great. And yes, Eovaldi was matching him 0 for 0, but Eovaldi was
He was
teetering
shaky.
on the edge. He was shaky and
Yeah.
it did take a lot of guts. I had Bryce on talking about the guts of Bochy to say, no, go out and pitch the sixth. Go out and pitch the sixth. And he did. It turned out to be the right thing to do. But that was they had several times with they should have been up 3-0
Yeah,
going
easy.
into the 7th.
And they were getting going early against Nathan Eovaldi in those early innings. Eovaldi was walking a ton of dudes in that game, and it just didn't lead to any runs for the D-backs despite how many runners that they had on bases.
All right. Well, when we come back, I'm going to talk a little bit about why the future may be very, very bright in Arizona, even brighter than the year where they got to game 5 of the World Series.
But I think I need to tell our listeners about this little thing that they might need in their life, Sully Baseball, because whether you're on extended travel, bracing for a major weather event, or limited by yet another supply shortage, you are covered, my friend. Thanks to our partners at Jace Medical, life-saving antibiotics and a long list of daily medications can be ordered in a 1-year supply. Go online right now at jacemedical.com to receive your 12-month supply on your daily medication. Remember to use promo code LOCKED ON at checkout for a discount as well. A verified customer had this to say about Jace. I am thankful for this service. Supply chain issues caused me to cut pills in half to have it. I ordered most of my daily meds with a year supply. I also ordered antibiotic kit. I feel secure now. Prices are lower than local pharmacies. I highly recommend this for everyone. If you or someone you love would get some peace of mind by having a year supply of daily med, go to jacemedical.com to see if it's offered for you. Remember to use promo code LOCKED ON for $20 off your purchase.
All right, we're here with Miller Thomas. Here's the deal. The Diamondbacks got to the World Series a year early, at least a year early. I mean, going in, this was a team which looked like it was going to be maybe a fringe wild card contender. It got into the playoffs. I thought they were the epitome of they were just happy to be here. They got past Milwaukee. Okay, they're going to face the Dodgers. They trounced the Dodgers. And, okay, but they're not going to pass Atlanta or Philadelphia. That pace, they get to Philadelphia. I mean, they overachieved on so many levels. But I don't think this is a one and done fluke team. I mean, when you consider they got to game 5 of the World Series, and do you know who did it? Jordan Lawler was a pinch hitter. With one of the top prospects in the game was a pinch hitter. Yeah, he was a role player on the team. Drew Jones is still gestating in the minors.
Yeah, sure. Marinating right now.
Marinating right there, but like he's a future star.
Mm-hmm.
He's a future. I mean, he's a top pick. Where you're hoping he's going to be, if not a franchise player, then at least a really good player. And you take a look. This was kind of the emergence of Ketel Marte as as a star in the postseason. It was the emergence of Corbin Carroll. Alec Thomas had some big moments. You're starting to see that there were a lot of players on this team who, and of course, the 1-2 punch. Kelly had a wonderful year. Gallen had a wonderful year. Brandon Pfaadt seemed to develop during the postseason. So, in so many ways, this team has the foundation for being maybe not 100-win team for the next 3 or 4 years, but certainly a 90-win team with this postseason experience by being a little battle tested right now. We've seen that they've, the bright lights aren't going to frighten them. I don't think they folded under the bright lights. I think Texas was the ultimate hot or cold team in this entire season. There were some times that you look like 100-win teams, sometimes they could miss the playoffs altogether. And they stayed hot throughout certainly on the road. They didn't lose a single road game. So I think with Drew Jones and I think with Lawler, I think there are further stars who could bloom in Arizona along with the current stars that are currently there. And I give them more than a puncher's chance in 2024 and 2025.
Yeah, and honestly, for the D-backs, like I even have a question of, do you even look at that farm system and consider trading some of those pieces to go out and get another star? There are rumors that maybe the San Diego Padres would move off of Juan Soto. Like, do you maybe go sniff around that market and really try to maximize this window that you have, knowing this team has the ceiling of a World Series team? Like, I don't know, a guy like Corbin Burns with a year left on his deal. Do you want to get aggressive and trade for a guy like that? Like, this D-backs farm system is pretty deep, pretty loaded. There's some more guys outside of Lawler and Drew Jones that might get called up next season and within the next couple of years that could really help this infrastructure. And the D-backs owner, Ken Kendrick, he was like, you know what? When you make it to the World Series, you get a little extra money in your pocket. He's been talking about maybe opening up the purse a little bit this offseason and spending some money. So if the D-backs can get aggressive, I'm not saying they have to go out there and spend a bag on like a Shohei Ohtani, but if you could get like a Candelario or someone, or Justin Turner play third base, maybe go add a legit rotation starter like a Jordan Montgomery or something, and then add some real pieces to this team with the youth that you already had, like you said, internal development. A guy like Gabriel Moreno another year gets better. Alec Thomas. I mean, Corbin Carroll was already one of the best players in Major League Baseball. Maybe he actually wins the MVP next season, takes like a Ronald Acuna level leap next year. So another great thing about this D-backs team, most of their players are locked up for the near future. Corbin Carroll's on like a decade-long deal. Ketel Marte is going to be there for the next few years. Like, the infrastructure of this D-backs team, everyone is young, under arbitration, or they're locked up for the next like couple seasons. So you don't have to worry about this D-backs core going anywhere. You can just build and add to it, which I think is the most positive thing about this D-backs team moving forward.
Yeah, and I think that they have a very, very deep farm system. You remember my biggest criticism I had to Baltimore at the trade deadline, who also have an outrageously deep farm system, and the time is now for them. They were like winning ahead of schedule. They have a lot of players who are going to be there for a bunch of years. I felt they needed desperately to add a frontline starting pitcher. Everyone in the world saw they needed a frontline starting pitcher, and they had an incredibly deep farm system where they could have put together a package for something. They did virtually nothing, and what happened? Their starting pitching was disastrous, and they got swept out of the playoffs by Texas. Arizona already has a pennant under their belt. They've already, when you start to put together, how did this run go? Well, there's already one trip to the World Series. So obviously you want to take a similar route, but win the last 3 games. And they have chips to deal. They have the ability to say, hey, instead of saying, oh, we're building for the future. No, some point the future shows up. The future showed up for
The
Arizona.
future's now, yeah. After
Yeah.
seeing what the team did this season, you can't just sit on your hands and be like, you know what? Let's just rest on our laurels. Let's just hope the team gets better with another year under their belt. No, I think once you realize this team has the ceiling to go to the World Series, considering that's what they did this past season, the window is now open to maximize his roster. When you have a guy like Corbin Carroll in his prime playing the way he is, I think you have to maximize the talent you have right now.
And here's the team I'll show you as your example. Kansas City. Kansas City traded away some prospects like Will Myers, like Jake Odorizzi, like Brandon Finnegan, like a couple players who are like big, like pieces of the future. When they saw the future was staring, the future showed up. And they took advantage of that, winning the back-to-back pennants. Now, has Kansas City fallen on hard times? Yes. But Royals fans, I know Royals fans, they got that run where they went to back-to-back World Series, winning it all against the Mets in 2015. For that fan base, sometimes the window of opportunity is not as gigantic as you'd like it to be. And I don't think this is going to be slamming shut as quick as it did for KC, but it's now time. If you have a top prospect who's in single A, like, oh, he's going to be really great by 2026, 2027. Guess what? Then good luck on Cincinnati then. Good luck in San Diego then. This is a chance you to win right here, right now, with an affordable team. And, again, I don't like to get too much into payroll because I think teams not being able to pay stars is a little overblown. They're all rich billionaires are owning the team. You can afford it. But if it's here, and like you have a star like Corbin Carroll who is not being paid superstar money yet, then add to
never will.
Get that and build it up.
And he never will be, which is the crazy thing because he's locked up for like 8 years at like 15 a year. Like it's literally one of the most insane, outrageous deals in Major League Baseball.
But again, I don't besmirch the guy for doing that because
get the money early.
If you have a chance, there have been players who have flamed out. And there have been players who look like they can't miss players who missed terribly. So if you find, if you're playing deal or no deal, and you've got that suitcase that opens up and it's like, well, I'm be making $15 million a year for such and such number of years. I don't know if I'd turn it down.
Yeah, and he gets more money on the front end instead of dealing with arbitration. It's that back end when you're like Corbin Carroll is 26 and he's making like 15 a year. You're gonna be like, he'll be fine.
He'll do all right. He will do all right.
He's gonna have endorsement money.
He'll have a nice house in Tucson if he wants. He'll do okay. He can send his kids to U of A. But
Sully, stop talking like that. We don't want that. But the Kansas City Royals are the model. I've been talking about them a lot on my personal podcast because they're like the model that I've been comparing the Dbacks to. Because when you look at even that Royals offense from 2014, 2015, it's very reminiscent of how the Dbacks got to the World Series this year, where we're trying to grind out hits, we're trying to play small ball baseball. So it's like I looked at that Kansas City Royals team as like the precursors to what the D-backs could have done this past year. And considering the Royals, that first year wildcard team exceed expectations, make it to the World Series, come back the very next season and win it all. That's exactly what I want the D-backs to do. And I think they could put a better product on the field than even that Royals team did, because I look at that Royals team on paper, like it really wasn't all that. They just had a lot of players really play above expectations after coming off that World Series run. And so I'm hoping that World Series run, getting the playoff experience, could be a catalyst for a lot of these players and maybe adds a different level of confidence to their game. Maybe they get a little bit more hungry in the regular season. Like maybe it means a little bit more something to this D-backs team, because now you're going to the season and it's not going to be the little old Arizona Diamondbacks rolling into town now. Now you got a little target on your back. Everyone knows that you were the comeback kids last year. You won the pennant. Like no one is going to just take the D-backs as a joke anymore. When you see the D-backs on your schedule now, it's going to be a little bit different rolling in to town in the regular season.
All right, final segment here with Miller Thomas. I'm your pal Sully. The awards are going to be handed out. The Major League Baseball Writers Awards are going to be handed out this week. We're going to Rookie of the Year, Cy Young Award, Manager of the Year, and of course the MVP. Let's get our picks on the record right now. I don't think there's a lot of drama in this, except maybe. Okay, well, I mean, who do you have for the Cy Young Award?
For NL, see the thing, I don't think the drama comes to who's going to win the award. I think there's a little bit more drama as to who was named a finalist. Because listen, I know I do the Locked On Dbacks podcast, but I was still a little bit surprised that Zach Gallen was named finalist. I do think he rode that first half all the way, because you look at those second half numbers for Zach Gallen down the stretch, he really did struggle big time. I don't even know if I would say he was the Cy Young for the Dbacks by the end of the season. And a guy like Justin Steele, I was actually kind of surprised he wasn't named a finalist, considering the amount of wins he had, the ERA he had this season. I thought he was going to be a lock to make it over a Zach Gallen, just because of the way Zach Gallen struggled in the second half of the season. But I think Blake Snell could potentially win this award unanimously. I think he's going to run away with it.
I think Snell's do that. And I also think Garrett Cole is going to win the AL unanimously. I mean, there were some of the good pitchers this year, but I mean, Cole, could you imagine the year the Yankees would have had without Cole? I mean, they barely kept their nose above 500 with him. And there were so many games where he pitched 6-7 innings, set up 1 run, and then the bullpen wet the bed. So I think Cole, who, look, at some people have gotten on him, especially because he bombed in the wild card game against Boston a few years ago.
Yeah.
But I think he's been a solid signing for the Yankees. I mean,
he's been an elite signing. I mean, he's a top 3 Cy Young candidate every single season, going 200 plus innings. Like, I don't know if anyone's had a bigger workload in the American League than Garrett Cole since being signed by the Yankees. But random question for you, Sully: is Blake Snell now on a Hall of Fame track, winning a Cy Young in both leagues? Like, that's kind of crazy to think about.
I think he's on a Brett Saberhagen track right now. Brett Saberhagen was someone who did win a pair of Cy Young awards in the 80s, or maybe a Tim Lincecum track who won a pair of Cy Young awards. I need to have more elite seasons from him. There have been pitchers who have had a couple of like super elite seasons and then a lot of good seasons. And I think Snell is at that point. I think I'm not quite there yet. He's winning two Cy Young awards and winning a Cy Young award in each league is very, very good for the Hall of Fame resume. But I'm not quite ready to talk about his Cooperstown resume just yet.
Yeah, some solid postseason numbers too. So interesting guy to look out for the next few years.
The American League Rookie of the Year. Again, no offense to Josh Young, who was wonderful. This is Gunnar Henderson of Baltimore. I mean, this is why I think they got to give these awards out before the postseason begins, because I mean, you have to always say, remember, it's for the regular season. It's for the regular season. You know, so. Gunnar Henderson was, I think, far and away the best in the regular season. And so, I think he's a no-brainer for this.
Yeah, I think he's going to run away with it as well. Just want to shout out finalist Tristan Casas of the Red Sox, because he had himself a monster season, and they've been looking for a good first baseman, try to make Bobby Dbacks work, put Michael Chavis over there. They've had a little bad run of first baseman. They tried Kyle Schwarber over there. So nice to see Tristan Casas, a nice young guy, step up and looks like he's going to be able to fill that position for the next few years.
I don't really have a thought in the National League. I don't think it's a wide open. I don't think there's no clear front runner in the National League. Who are we kidding? If Corbin Carroll doesn't win, we need to start an investigation.
I think sports books were paying this one out like in the summer because he was running away with it so early. I mean, literally the only rookie in MLB history, 25 home runs, 50 stolen bases in your debut season. It wasn't just a great rookie season. Corbin Carroll is going to finish probably top 5, top 7 in MVP voting in the National League. And what he did in the postseason to those first 3 rounds, Corbin Carroll is going to win an MVP at some point in the future, unless Shohei Ohtani is coming to the National League and joining Corbin Carroll on the Arizona Diamondbacks.
Manager of the Year. Did they give out Manager of the Year yet? I can't remember. I don't think they did. The Manager of the Year finalists. Who do you have for the Manager of the Year in the National League?
Well, this is where I'll say I was a little bit surprised Zach Gallen was a finalist for Cy Young, but I'm a little bit surprised Torey Lovullo didn't get a little love for being a finalist for the Dbacks, considering first half of the season they did have the division lead, struggled a little bit in the second half, but it was still good enough to make it to the postseason, still exceeded expectations, I think, in the regular season. This is a guy who I think is liked by the media. 2017 Manager of the Year award winner already. So a little bit surprised Torrey didn't get a little bit love here, but
Me too.
I think
Me too.
yeah, just a little bit. But I think for the NL Manager of the Year, I mean, Brian Snitker seems like the favorite, but I think I'm actually going to go with the newbie on the Miami Marlins, Skip Shoemaker, because you said in the offseason, the Marlins are going to make the postseason just because they don't have Don Mattingly anymore.
Yes,
that came into
yes.
fruition. So because of that, I'm going to honor your prediction and give it to the Marlins manager, despite them firing their executive, Kim, and I'm still pissed about that.
Speaking of people who have changed teams, I think Council's going to win. I think Council's going to win Manager of the Year and then collect his award with his new employers in Chicago. I think it could certainly go to Snitker. I think it could certainly go to Schumacher. I think it's going to go to Council. By the way, for the American League, this is the one you have to grab people by the lapels, bring them close to your face, and say, "This is for the regular season." As it's Brandon Hyde, Kevin Cash, and Bruce Bochy. Obviously, if it was for the postseason, this Bochy would be carried on everyone's shoulders. Who do you got?
I'm still going Bochy. I think with hindsight, it's easy to be like Rangers, big money team. Like maybe they were expected to be there, but coming into the regular season, people still didn't think the Rangers were like even a true playoff contender. Yes, the Orioles exceeded expectations as well, but this Rangers team, did they win the division? No, they lost the division on the last day of the season.
Yeah, they tied with Houston. Houston had the tiebreaker.
So they tied the division. They had like one of the best run differentials in the American League. Their offense was absolutely insane. They had a terrible bullpen that he had to manage and piece through the whole season. Had big injuries to your rotation with DeGrom at the beginning of the year that you had to scramble through. John Gray, you had Evaldi in and out. So I think with the injuries, even a Corey Seager, he missed some time. So I think battling with all the injuries and the expectations that the Rangers did have because of their payroll and bringing in guys like Jacob DeGrom, I think there was a lot of pressure and expectations on the Rangers this season. I think Bruce Bochy surpassed all of that, so I'm going to give it to him. Finally got a big boy manager.
Yeah, I don't think it's gonna. I think it's gonna go to Brandon Hyde. They won 100 games. With a year where last year the Yankees were a 99-win team. They're in a division with Toronto. They're in a division with the Rays, who got off that remarkable start, and they did so with a piecemeal starting rotation. I think it's going to go to Brandon Hyde. I would love it to go to Bochy, but I think Bochy, who has won the Manager of the Year before, I won't cry if he doesn't win it. Speaking of no drama, is there any drama in either MVP race? I mean, it's Ohtani and Acuna, right?
Acuna is a lock for the NL MVP as well. Ohtani's also a lock for the American League. I mean, if you counted the postseason, Corey Seager would probably get even more.
But you don't.
You don't. So
if you count the NBA, then that may help some too. I mean, it doesn't know, but you might as well say, if you count the previous year.
I don't want to throw it out there. Yeah. Unless you want to say because Ohtani, season got cut short because of injury, he still played a ton of games. But if you want to use the injury argument plus the fact that his team once again just was meaningless and irrelevant in the regular season, of course, I know it's not his fault, everyone. I mean, he's literally pitching and hitting. He was literally the best hitter and arguably the best pitcher in the American League separately if he could only do one or the other. The fact that he does both, as we always say, is insane. So he's definitely going to win it. But I wouldn't be mad if someone wanted to give a little love to Corey Seager. Maybe give him some second place. All the second place.
There may be one who throws Corey Seager like gets like one first place vote from someone, but
like the Rangers writer.
But I can't fathom him getting multiple. So I think we're going to see some predictable things. Well, look at Miller. Before we take off, let's do the trivia question for you, and this is going to be Diamondback centric. Trivia question is this: the Diamondbacks were formed in 1998. Mm-hmm. Who was the first Diamondback player to finish in the top 5 of the National League MVP vote? Don't you say the answer yet as I hold up a razor inexplicably.
Gonna cut me, huh?
Yeah, put the answers down here on YouTube in the comment section or at Locked On MLB on Twitter or whatever it's called now. Locked On MLB Pods on Instagram. And or at Sully Baseball on Twitter, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. Miller Thomas, where they can follow your show?
You can follow Locked On Diamondbacks on Twitter, or excuse me, not on Twitter, on YouTube. Please hit subscribe there, or on all your podcasting platforms. You can follow me on Twitter at CareerToms24, or look up Locked On Diamondbacks, both Twitter and Instagram for the podcast handle.
All right. Grieving with the host of Locked On Diamondbacks. This has been a Locked On Diamondbacks crossover with Locked On MLB. He's Miller Thomas. I'm your pal Sully. Hey, let's fist pump into the offseason.